Hi, I'm Joe, and I'm a student of Bhante Candana. Bhante is a wandering monk, and at the moment he doesn't have a permanent home or a monastery. So he depends on the donation and generosity from his students and supporters. So if you find any of his videos helpful or beneficial to you and the people you know, please consider making a donation to him at the link below. Thank you so much and have a good day.
Okay. Today, I wanted us to venture into a different direction from the usual explorations of the suttas, where we go to the Khuddaka Nikaya, which are the shorter or minor discourses series. And this is where we find some of the oldest suttas. And of course, the Sutta Nipata is to be found within this collection of discourses, the Khuddaka Nikaya. But within the Khuddaka Nikaya, we have several original books that are some of the oldest. The Udana, for example, happens to be one. Itivuttaka is another. Of course, the Dhammapada is another. And then we have, of course, the Sutta Nipata. And then we have two very important books, the Theragāthā and the Theragāthā. The Thera means an elder. In the case of a Thera, it means an elder Bhikkhu. In the case of a Theri, means an elder Bhikkhuni. So these were not just any Bhikkhu and Bhikkhunis. These were Arahants. So over the course of their lives, their students memorized some of the verses that they had spoken in different times, or those utterances. And this is the second of section of verses that I've done as translated in my entire life. The first one I did in 2000, New Year's Eve of 2021, and that was the Anya Kondanya Theragāthā. But recently, for some reason, I was very drawn towards the Venerable Ānanda's verses. And by the way, that collection also has, of course, verses from the two chief disciples, Venerable Sāriputta and Venerable Bhante Candana. But I especially was drawn towards Venerable Ānanda's because I'm very much intrigued, I'm very much touched, as most of us, with the human element, the human relational phenomenon of these individuals that have lived, whose voices we kind of hear in a passive tone, in many cases when Lord Buddha is talking, of course. Every time we hear the words, "Thus have I heard," or "This is what I personally heard," that's Venerable Ānanda's voice during the first council, when he recounted the whole entire Nikayas. That means the Digha Nikaya, the long discourses, the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length discourses, the Samyutta Nikaya, which are the connected discourses, the Anguttara Nikaya, the numerical discourses, and here we have the Khuddaka Nikaya. Of course, he had some help along the way in some of these because it took him months to recite, as you can imagine, because we're dealing with thousands and thousands of suttas, discourses that he had memorized. And that was one of the key reasons that Lord Buddha really wanted Venerable Ānanda to be his attendant. he was Lord Buddha's attendant for 25 years, Venerable Ānanda. And some might not know, but Lord Buddha had already gone through several attendants, meaning younger bhikkhus and in some cases novice monks who had failed in doing a good job in being a proper attendant. Some were too much into themselves and what they wanted to do. Some, you had Venerable Nagita, you had Venerable Meghiya, and some had psychic abilities, some did not. And so one of the things that Venerable Ānanda had requested as a condition, because he had placed these, I wouldn't say demands, but conditions in order for his acceptance, be made. Because each bhikkhu approached Lord Buddha and said, Bhante, I'd like to be your attendant. And Lord Buddha dismissed them, including Venerable Sāriputta. And nobody, everybody noticed that Venerable Ānanda had not approached. And they were surprised because Venerable Ānanda was there since the very beginning of Siddhartha Gautama's life, because they were of the same age, they were cousins. They grew up together. They're from the same family, the royal family. So they were surprised. So they started nudging Venerable Ānanda, why don't you go ahead and approach? And he says, well, if I do approach, I'm going to have to ask some preconditions. And they said, sure, go ahead. So he approached and he respectfully said, Bhante, I would like very much to be your attendant. However, I would like a few things first for the Tathagata to agree upon before I fully, submit my application for being your attendant. So one of them, he had several. So he didn't want, basically, many people would expect him to have the condition of, if it's today, it would be something like, well, if I take this job, this role, not to minimize or trivialize this very important role in history, but today, if it were somebody in that position, they would say, I want this, usually something to aggrandize, to give themselves even more of a clout and importance, significance. In the case of Venerable Ānanda, it was the exact opposite. He said, at no point I would like to get special treatment. Because I am the Tathagata's attendant, I need Lord Buddha's word that I will not be treated any differently than any other monk. Imagine somebody saying that as a condition for them to accept a very responsible, very important role. And Lord Buddha said yes, and including like special gifts and things that would come, because he's the attendant, because he also wanted to be a liaison between the laity and anyone who would approach Lord Buddha with an important question. He wanted to have almost like a carte blanche to approach Lord Buddha, no matter what the situation is, unless it was extremely difficult, like Lord Buddha was extremely sick, for example. But to approach Lord Buddha with any questions whatsoever. And Lord Buddha had to say yes before he agreed. But another thing that is very key here is that Venerable Ānanda had the condition that sometimes he would have other responsibilities while Lord Buddha was someplace where he was giving a Dhamma talk. And at the end of the day, Venerable Ānanda would always go check on Lord Buddha. He would always, sweep the grounds around Lord Buddha's kuti. He would make sure there's quiet, this and that. But he would also check in on Lord Buddha before he went to bed. But before that happened, He needed to get the Dhamma that was spoken by Lord Buddha that day. And Lord Buddha had to agree that he had to retell, meaning to give the discourse again to Venerable Ānanda. Now, some might think of that as being selfish, but they would completely be missing the point, because Venerable Ānanda's purpose was so that, because he knew, and Lord Buddha knew, that he had photographic memory when it came to texts. Whatever he would hear, what today we call photographic memory, he would recite it back, no matter the time, no matter how long of a discourse it might have been. So he wanted to make sure that he was codifying it in his memory bank that same day before Lord Buddha would go to bed, would retire for the day. And Lord Buddha said yes. So after his selfless conditions were met, Venerable Ānanda agreed, and he was, of course, accepted, and the whole Sangha approved. And they were rejoicing and very delighted in the fact that Venerable Ānanda was now going to be the attendant to Lord Buddha. So we're going to see his verses, his statements from different times in his life. And I will, as best as I can, I will pause to highlight that. So, because sometimes it's not like a flowing timeline in some cases. So I have to give, like a brief side note here and there. So please look for Venerable Ānanda, the human, in these words. And especially as far as we're concerned, it's not just some poetic verses that help us to be moved, which is also like a sensual, although in the emotional and psychological sense, sensual. But go beyond that. There's a significance here, a relevancy here to our own path and our own struggle in the path to gain freedom from suffering. So please look for those as well. Look for yourself in Venerable Ānanda. That is what I'm trying to say. So this is a verse. They're not necessarily called like suttas, however, they are part of the Suttanta in a sense, but they are under the heading of Theragāthā, verse number 17.3. And it's again from the Khuddaka Nikāya, the Minor Discourses, from the book called the Theragāthā, which are the verses of the elder bhikkhus. And it is within the Tingsanipāta, which is the book of the 30s, broken down according to the verses. And within that, there is the Pattamavagga, which is the grouping or chapter 1. And this sutta, if you like to call it, is called the Ānandattheragāthā, verses of the Venerable Ānanda. So let's begin. The wise man must not delight in the company of those that are mean and resentful, the two-faced and evil-hearted, who speak with slander and bad intent, the ones eagerly wanting to bring harm unto others in one way or another. For this reason, you must never associate with such people, nor call them a friend. As was the case with Lord Buddha, so is the case with his Arya Savakas, his students, his disciples. When we hear a verse being uttered by him, there's a reason. There was a trigger. So here the commentators have said that Venerable Ānanda had observed a bhikkhu who was associating with the wrong crowd, the wrong type of bhikkhus. Because bhikkhus are like people. They are people. So some slander, some talk badly, some tell lies, some engage in some dubious behaviors. Some are not basically, totally undeserving of wearing the robes, but nevertheless, they're in the Sangha. So this was happening even then. So Venerable Ānanda saw someone who, in a positive light, they would see them in a positive light. He would see them, having a promising, future ahead of them. And then he would see them in a different context, with a different crowd of monks. Suddenly he would see them as being, faltering and going the wrong way. How many of us have people in our lives whom we call friends? But when you run them through the test of your past experiences or present experiences, you really have a tough time putting them under the heading of a friend. Really. Because a true friend must inspire you to be a better human being, more than you are, to improve upon who you are. They must be honest, truthful, sometimes brutally, but not for the sake of harming you or hurting you, but for the sake of sharpening you even more, to bring you face to face with reality as to why you're here. What is the biggest goal of your life now, in this life? So they are the biggest ambassadors of a better future for you now, instead of somebody that you just hang out with and shoot the breeze with or feel good at the moment. Meanwhile, you are sacrificing valuable time. And you know that if you say what your heart really wants you to say in front of them, some of these individuals will turn their back on you. So many of us live a life of lies to ourselves. Why? Because we don't want to lose these people, these so-called friends. So here Venerable Ānanda is saying, really check the people you're associating with. The first verse of the Mangala Sutta is all about this. Associating with the foolish, to see that, to be able to really see that clearly is already a wonderful blessing. And then to know who the good people are to associate with, that is a blessing. So we must know whom to consider our true friends. You have the Dhamma's permission, if you will, to scratch off, to erase entirely your past relationships, and not to carry on a relationship with an individual or individuals who do not brighten your mind, who do not give you a more heightened sense of virtue, who don't allow you to become even more beautiful in your values in life, despite the unpleasant way that it might sound at times, because they're pushing you out of your inertia. At the cost of the friendship, you might walk away from them because they said something too harsh. But sometimes those harsh words must be spoken to shake us off our jadedness. So Venerable Ānanda is talking to us, not just to that bhikkhu who's been dead and gone 2,600 years ago, Otherwise, why would it matter? It's just a poetry or verses that is like, yeah, you feel good and warm inside, and then you move on. No, these verses are far beyond that. And Venerable Ānanda continues, instead, the wise man must seek the friendship of the kind and lovely, the person with genuine wisdom and faith in his heart, the one with understanding, who is both learned and lovely to be around. It is no surprise that associating with such a superior person is always truly a blessing. Basically, he's repeating what Lord Buddha said in the Mangala Sutta's first verses. These are the individuals where, while you're with them, actually before you even go and meet with them, during and after, every time they come to mind, your heart fills up with joy. You feel much richer. These are the individuals that, even though you might see them once every 10 years, it feels like you just were with them yesterday. Because they're such a joy to be around. You might sit there and not say a word. You don't have to tell jokes to kind of add more pizzazz to the moment, some spice to the, to feel like, yeah, you're doing something. No, not to sit down and watch movies with. But even being with them, they might say one word or one gesture. That speaks volumes to us, to improve upon who we are, to make us better. So that's from one incident. And here we have another incident that has happened, which prompted Venerable Ānanda to speak these words these verses that are coming up. And here he is, the commentators say, most probably it was one of the courtesans that he was observing. And Lord Buddha would have several courtesans come by to listen to the Dhamma from the king's court, from the king's harem. And some of them were professional courtesans, like the courtesan from the well-known courtesan from Vesali, who was known throughout the Madhya Pradesh region, the middle country that's called. She was known as the courtesan, which basically is a prostitute. But in those days, Ambapali, her name was, she was wealthier than many of the princes of Vesali combined. They say that every night, to spend one night with her, the king would have to spend 1,000 gold pieces just for one night. So, so some of the texts have said this is when Venerable Ānanda is looking at her in front of the bhikkhus, and because they would come, and sometimes, you're not going to drop all that sense of identity if you're that important to the kingdom. Everybody's eyes are on you, including some of the bhikkhus. They're people, they're not all arahants. And Venerable Ānanda is here going to pull the rug from under that. Let's see what he says. Look at this colorfully decorated marionette dangling around in what is called a figure. This heap of sores, a massive lump of disease, is waiting to explode at any moment, but upon whom so many salivate, they drool, in their blind delusion, now victims of their own obsession, realizing not how nothing they see is what it seems, for none of it is lasting. None. In fact, there was one bhikkhu who had secretly fallen in love. I forgot if it was Ambapali. It might have been someone else, because he had fallen in love with a courtesan, not from the Vesali region, but from King Bimbisara's kingdom, which was Rajagha. Because what that they did at one point in history at that time, they said, well, the Vajjis, or the Vesali people, the princes there, have Ambapali as their highest, the most well-decorated, quote-unquote, courtesan. We need to have one here in Rajagaon. So they had a courtesan of their own. So she was apparently also very attractive and seductive, this and that. So, and she also began charging 1,000 dinars or gold coins per night. So one bhikkhu had secretly fallen in love with her. And Lord Buddha knew this. But she dies at a young age, and everybody's mourning this and that. And Lord Buddha has a few words, it's in the Dhammapada. And so they're about to cremate her because she had no relatives. It's amazing, while she was alive, everybody was huddling around her. And so King Bimbisara is getting ready to, he takes on the responsibility because she was a famous person after all in the kingdom. So they want to cremate her, and Lord Buddha sends word, don't do it yet. Let's wait for a few days. But place her on not an altar, but like a stone table or something in public for people to come and see. Not covered. And the intention was to have that bhikkhu who was out of town. So when he is back in Rajagaon, he hears about this and he's shocked. So he rushes also, and he sees her stretched on that platform, surrounded by people. And the skin has gone grayish blue or bloated and this and that. No one wants to approach her. In fact, everybody has something covering up their face because they don't want to smell her dead body. So I'm mentioning this because Lord Buddha arranges for the king to announce who wants to spend the night with this courtesan for 1,000 dinars. Of course, no hands go up. How about 100? No hands. It's a discount. It's a special discount. How about 10? How about 1? Nobody's hand was going up. These men were drooling over her a week ago. How about free? Take her. Who wants to take her? I think Lord Buddha addresses the bhikkhu at that point, confronts him and says, how about now, bhikkhu? You want to go spend time with her? Or do you still love her? And the bhikkhu is so ashamed. It was not there, what they thought to be there. It was never there. And that's what Venerable Ānanda is saying. So he continues, with hands and feet all painted in henna tattoos, and a face that is all covered in powder and makeup, creating the illusion of something that is not even there, the perfect mask to beguile, trapping in its snare the deluded fool, but not the one intent on reaching the farther shore. Yeah, you will be able to fool people. And that's what it is. That's why you have a multi-billion, if not $1 trillion business in the world today. Plastic surgery, makeups, somebody has to come up with something, and all of a sudden everybody's covering it. Some years ago, I was looking at some relatives, family, friends of mine, and I looked, there's something that looks unnatural on their face. I looked carefully because I hadn't seen them for a while. And I looked, the eyelashes. And I'm like, I used to change their diapers, as a layman. So now they're in their 20s. This is happening years ago, by the way. I'm looking, and there's this something that is not, I know it's not the natural eyelashes. They had glued it on. Fake eyelashes to look, I don't know, more seductive, provocative, but definitely unnatural and ugly. And I was shocked. I was pulled away. Like, why do you do that? I didn't say it, of course. To create an illusion of something that others are selling as something that is intriguing, beguiling, creating Maya, creating a bigger deception than the ones that we are already in. But it would be something to beguile a deluded fool, Venerable Ānanda says, but not the one who is intent on crossing over, leaving this whole mess, this flood of passions and wrong views behind and move on. And he continues, with hair delicately braided into 8 thick strands, augmenting her female figure, using the weapon of the eyes, fully decked with mascara and eyeliner to complete the seduction, creating the illusion of something that is not even there, the perfect mask to beguile, trapping in its snare the deluded fool, but not the one intent on reaching the farther shore. If you go to the shopping malls, I remember years ago, the cosmetic sections, I'm sure they still exist, but when you walk in, the men's section might have a small area, if there is, but then you have this huge part of the shopping mall or the mall dedicated to cosmetics. Mascara, this, that, people waiting, standing, modeling to get you to come so you can put something on, so you feel more attractive. Spending so much time. Imagine it was being done on a skeleton. Nobody ever puts a set of lipsticks on a lipstick on a skeleton, do they? Imagine, with the teeth missing, nose missing, eyeliner on a skeleton's where the eye socket used to be, just above it. Packaged neatly and put together just like a newly painted makeup box. The rotting body, with pieces coming apart every second, yet desperately glued together, just to create the illusion of something that is not even there. The perfect mask to beguile, trapping in its snare the deluded fool, but not the one intent on reaching the farther shore. Now, at one point or another, we've all gone through a stage or a phase in our lives. But it's important to move out of it, to realize that it is a fickle, it is a futile affair. The problem is, or the danger is, when people are stuck in the belief that they are somehow able to pause or halt or stop the passage of time, anicca. In spite of nature being nature, I'm going to go ahead and pull my skin. I'm going to go ahead and put stuff into my skin to make it look younger and this and that. These people have all missed the point of life. So those were the verses dedicated to exposing the reality of physical beauty as encountered in the person of a courtesan. Here we have another set of verses where Venerable Ānanda, well, you'll get it once I go over it. And remember, Venerable Ānanda also, as I mentioned, belongs to the same family. So he has the same family last name, meaning Gautama. So sometimes people get confused when they hear the word Gautama, the name Gautama, they immediately think it's Lord Buddha. No, We have to look at the context. So in this case, we're going to hear Venerable Ānanda referring to himself as Gautama also. So let's read this section. This Gautama, fully learned and knowledgeable, an eloquent speaker on the Dhamma, having served the Master, personal attendant to the Lord Buddha, is now finally released and unfettered. With the poisoned dart pulled out of his heart, has put the heavy burden down at last. And now he is finally ready for bed as he lies down to sleep. This traditionally is known as the night or the early morning hours right before the first council, where they codified, where about but the texts say 500, although the number sometimes is not agreed upon by scholars, but most scholars have no clue what they're talking about. But anyhow, the records we have say that there were 499 arahants ready, but they had also kept an extra spot in the cave where they were going to have the first council. This is in Rajaghat today. You can go and you can see it, but unfortunately the cave itself has collapsed, so there's only a small area of the cave you can still walk in after you climb up it's more than a hill actually. So they had kept the place because they knew they cannot do a good job of memorizing or reciting the suttas properly in their length without Venerable Ānanda. He was the guardian of the Dhamma. They knew this even when Lord Buddha was alive, even when the chief disciples were alive. He was the carrier, the steward of the Dhamma. But the problem was they all had to be arahants, because they did not want anybody in the future to come around and say, well, not all members of the first council were arahants. So therefore, the suttas that they put together cannot be 100% reliable, or the first council cannot be 100% reliable. For that, they said only 500. And some arahants were actually turned away, because Venerable Mahakassapa was the one who was assigned as the person to in a sense, oversee it. He was, somebody has to be. So they elected him, because he was even the idea of having the first council was Venerable Mahakassapa's. Because when Lord Buddha had died, Venerable Mahakassapa and his bhikkhus were not there in Kusinara. They still were, I forgot, I think they might have been in Malla's area. So they find out, because there was one Paribhajaka, a wandering ascetic, who was carrying a special kind of flower. And Venerable Mahakassapa knew that that flower does not grow on earth. It was a special kind of flower that was basically sprinkled on the body of Lord Buddha by the Devas. And he recognized it. This is not and he knew something was up. And he says, where did you get that? And he says, oh, your teacher has passed away a few days ago. And one of the bhikkhus who had recently become a bhikkhu, an older man, on hearing this, he started celebrating. He started like, what are you guys? Many of the bhikkhus started crying. So he's like, why are you getting upset? Finally, we got rid of the old man, in reference to Lord Buddha. Now we can do whatever we want, he says, because there's 227 rules we have. So he's like, now we can breathe finally. He's gone. So Venerable Mahakassapa hears this, sees this, witnesses this, but he doesn't say a word, because he says, this is the ending of the sasana if this continues. We have to nip it in the bud, as they say in English. So at that moment, he decides that we need to codify the teachings of Lord Buddha ASAP. as soon as possible. That's when he starts planning it. So within 3 months' time, King Ajatasattu organizes it. There's enough donors, of course, to make sure for months there will be provided for with food. Now the problem was Venerable Ānanda. He was not an Arahant yet, but everybody relied on him to get the Dhamma available. Otherwise, what are they going to codify? So Venerable Anuruddha was alive, and he was the half-brother of Venerable Ānanda. He and Venerable Mahakassapa were constantly encouraging him on a daily basis, giving him like special, like tutoring him on the path. And Venerable Anuruddha was known for his reliance on the Satipatthana, specifically on the body contemplation. That became a major driving force for Venerable Ānanda. Now, Venerable Ānanda that night prior, he had been practicing so intensely because he knew within a few hours they were going to hold the council. So he pushed himself on the 4 postures. Kaya Gata Anupassana, the body contemplation of the Satipatthana, whether standing, walking, sitting, or lying down. So he was practicing this non-stop, and he was just giving himself a brief rest in between, because don't forget, he was 80 years old. He was the same age as Lord Buddha. He was tired, but he had enough adhitthana, the diligence, the heedfulness to practice and practice and practice. And he goes to his room, his kuti, and he sits on his bed, practices sitting meditation. And then he says, okay, let me just rest the body a little bit. As they say that before his head touched the pillow, while his feet were still, I read one commentator who said the feet were still touching the ground. He became an Arahant at that moment. So these verses come from that moment that he's saying, now he's talking about himself in the third person. Now Gautama, is finally ready for bed as he lies down to sleep. That's why he's saying, I've served the master, and I've now put down the heavy burden, because my heart is finally released and the poison dart is pulled out. And he continues, contaminants of the heart are fully destroyed and no more. No more barriers to overcome, no floods left to cross. All that remains is safety now. And that is what Nibbana is, ultimate safety. You don't need lawyers, you don't need police officers, you don't need special cameras, you don't need bodyguards, you don't need rocket systems and whatever to protect you in a country that is, as their body, completely volatile, completely actually fragile, destined to be broken up. But Nibbana isn't that. It is the ultimate safety. And he continues, for this, Gautama too has now attained Nibbana and now lives bearing this very last body. He too now lives having gone beyond birth and death, because he had seen so many bhikkhus come, attain, and then die eventually. He's seen them, witnessed them, and he's always left behind as far as he's concerned, because he was always busy with other things. One of the things that Lord Buddha advises against for bhikkhus or any practitioner is to be overly involved with work. Sometimes being active, engaged with work, whatever type of work, the more lofty it sounds, the more, I save lives, so I'm busy, I have to run an ER, this and that. Okay. So every time there is a question as to how am I spending time to make myself happy, I throw that in. and everybody quiets down. How are they going to argue that? How am I going to argue that? So I have my excuse to avoid improving upon myself. That's what Venerable Ānanda was doing, because we see on several occasions, Lord Buddha was chastising him because he was not practicing. He was too busy going and teaching others. He was too busy trying to help people come and see Lord Buddha, arranging meetings. He was doing important work, but none of them will be as important as working on himself as far as Lord Buddha was concerned. And he knew that. And we see that climax, in a sense, that apex moment, at that moment in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, where he goes and leans against the door and he starts sobbing. And he sees Lord Buddha dying over there. And he's like, I still haven't attained. And I wasted my life. And Lord Buddha calls him over and he says, no, no, no. Within 3 months' time, you will attain. So that was the confirmation. And that conviction is absolutely necessary for each one of us. If you want to be happy yourself, in whatever capacity, yet deep down, you're not convinced that you deserve to be happy, you will not be happy. You might have the best therapist in the world working with you, the best support system. You won't be happy. And the same goes here. In the path, in this sasana, the dispensation of Lord Buddha, anyone who ventures out into this path, wanting to attain, wanting to experience, to practice the path, we need to have this earnest confidence, this faith that you, the person, most certainly will attain Arahantship. Otherwise, we're just screaming at the wall, wanting something to happen. There's no window, by the way, either, for someone to pop their head and say, what's wrong? What do you want? None. We just keep wanting things, but without having that belief that yes, this will happen. So it would not have happened had Venerable Ānanda not known for sure that it would happen. That's what I'm trying to say. And not just him, every single person. That's why you have, in many cases, Lord Buddha going and seeing the Bhikkhu, seeing the person in person, face to face. Because there's a wonderful thing that happens when someone else tells something to us that we've been telling to ourselves for a long time. But something happens when someone else says it to us, especially a person in that position as Lord Buddha. He continues, Gautama, guardian of the Dhamma, who holds the teachings of Lord Buddha in his heart, having received them from the mighty kinsman of the sun himself, stands now on the solid foundation of the path that leads to Nibbana supreme, having walked it and directly realized it for himself, the freedom he was promised. Promised by whom? By Lord Buddha. And Venerable Anuruddha knew that his brother, his half-brother, was going to make it. And in the morning, he was there. He showed up at the council. And he spent the next several months, anywhere from 6 to 7 months, some have said, reciting the suttas. So they would bring him special herbs, teas, with honey to soften his throat, especially from the Himalayas. They would bring it to him because he kept on going. He kept on, and he would be questioned first. What was the incident that happened? We recall that incident, let's say, with Ambapali, in Vesali. Do you remember? Avuso, friend. And then he would say, yes, evam me sutang. This is what I personally heard. From whom? From Lord Buddha himself. Or from the other bhikkhus, like Venerable Sāriputta. So that went on for months. So Venerable Ānanda was the person during the first council to cover in this case, the suttantas, or what we now use as suttas. The suttas, the term, we actually have it from the Vinaya Pitaka, which, by the way, is the second. That's what dispensation of Lord Buddha is. Dhamma and Vinaya. There's no Abhidhamma. Abhidhamma came in the third council, 300 years later, by the way. So after Lord Buddha's death. So it was much later addition, even though others have said otherwise. But we don't see a record of that in all of the suttas. But for the Vinaya, which is the code of discipline, which also has within it so much Dhamma, again, Lord Buddha's words, discourses, that is more directed towards the codification of the rules for monks and nuns. So that one was the responsibility of Venerable Upali to recite. And that was much shorter in its size, or compared to the suttas that Venerable Ānanda had to do. So here we see verses coming up where someone is asking Venerable Ānanda, how many suttas does he know? How many teachings, discourses has he learned? And this is his response. With 82,000 suttanta, which are suttas, discourses, received personally from the Blessed One's own lips, and another 2,000 from my fellow bhikkhus. In total, 84,000 are the teachings I have learned and retained. The precious Dhamma I have memorized, kept intact in my heart. Sometimes people forget their last name, their middle name. The keeping of the Dhamma intact in his heart is very important, because sometimes people will say it the way they like to understand, they have understood it, but that also will cloud, especially in those days, because there was nothing in writing. That's why it was so important to memorize. These things were not written down for at least 500 years. The first time they were actually carved on stone and things, and also ola leaves, palm leaves and things. So here we have another verse. This is when Venerable Ānanda would go to visit the sick bay, because the monasteries, especially the bigger monasteries, would have an area where the older or sicker, or those monks who are struggling with some illness, would go and stay there, and have their wounds be tended to by other bhikkhus. So, but in doing so, he would also check some other kutis on the way. Venerable Ānanda and Venerable Sāriputta were the ones, like the mother and the nurse, they're called, for the Sangha. So they would also clean up after. Some bhikkhus might have rushed out, so they would go and fix the bed and fix the areas, clean it up, sweep it. So here we see an incident where Venerable Ānanda is going and seeing a bhikkhu lounging around, lying down, enjoying a siesta for himself. And this is his response. The unexcelled person, happy with the little or no learning he possesses, decays with age, much like an ox. We understand that this person, this bhikkhu, must have been an older bhikkhu. Much like an ox, where although his flesh may double in size, with a body that is too heavy to carry, but whatever knowledge or wisdom he may have had, well, that is an entirely different story, for it never develops nor matures. You basically just put on size. You grow fat, and then you die, and the other bhikkhus have to come and carry you and put you on the cremation, pyre, and then there goes that life. So basically, you're just a consumer. You're just sustaining yourself on other people's resources. While you're enjoying your free time, you just, waltzing through life. A bhikkhu is supposed to be a hard worker. A true bhikkhu works harder than a layperson at the stock market, okay? Who run around like crazy ants. But the bhikkhu's work, as far as the energy that we have to put, is very demanding. That's why we have to leave the lay life. Because there's so many responsibilities already in lay life that does not allow us to do the other work that we are trying to do. So we don't go and just to have like a vacation for the rest of our lives. That's not it. So anytime a bhikkhu looks at a layperson and sees that the layperson is working harder than themselves, that's a failing bhikkhu, as far as I'm concerned. But you don't have to be doing things with your hands. Because what you have in Asia, especially in Thailand, they would just keep building things. They even have a title for such bhikkhus. You don't see that anywhere in the suttas, by the way. Oh, this Ajahn is an expert at building. What building what? We're in the work of deconstructing the sankharas. We don't build, we take them apart. We don't pile bricks of ignorance or actual mortar and bricks. We take things apart. And that's a full-time job. That's why we work hard. We're supposed to, anyhow. And here we see Venerable Ānanda chastising a bhikkhu who is talking badly to another bhikkhu because he has a little bit of learning. He might have heard a few verses from Lord Buddha and maybe has gotten even into some jhanas, and now he's sitting on his high horse and looking down. And this is when Venerable Ānanda is putting him in his place. The one who, on account of his learning, despises or looks down upon others of little learning, belittling and minimizing them with his conceit, to me is no different than the man who has been blind since birth, but carries a lantern around, believing it would improve his vision. I love the image. Imagine a blind person since birth walking around with a flashlight so that he could see better. That's how dumb it is, he's saying to this person. That's how dumb you are, to think that you are better because you know a few things that, and you're putting the other bhikkhus down, making them feel small, instead of teaching them something. Stay close, and he's now talking to the other bhikkhu, encouraging him to go and find himself a better teacher. Stay close and attend to those who are learned and wiser than you, for through association with such teachers, your understanding will only grow and not wane. This itself is the root and foundation of living the holy life. So make sure you study and memorize the Dhamma from them. So know who your teachers are. Just as we were talking about your Kalyanamittas, your friends, they must be, at the very least, of your own caliber, on the same level as you. But ideally, they need to be better than you, smarter than you, wiser than you, especially in this case. Otherwise, if they're less than who you are, where you are, how are you going to grow? He says, go and study the Dhamma and memorize it from such people, not these guys, these characters. By grasping and understanding the structure and meaning of what is taught, one skillfully explains by interpreting the essential terms, putting everything in its right place through unmistakable intuition, always speaking the timeless truth from the heart, the Dhamma that has been memorized but kept fresh through the chisel of discernment. Once having accepted the Dhamma, one ignites and then maintains fervent desire within, pouring more energy with resolve at the right time whenever necessary, while discerning the true Dhamma from all that is Adhamma, striving as he builds more patience within himself and becomes composed, well established in serenity, remaining in it throughout. So you see, it's a full-time work. But you can't just keep running and running and running, because he says, working with energy and resolve, knowing how much you put into it at the right time. So you're using your discernment. That's what I've mentioned so many times about the 7 factors of awakening. We balance energy with calmness, tranquility of the mind, passaddhi, with samadhi. We balance it out. We have to always reignite it with the investigation of Dhamma Vichaya. But all throughout the time, sati has to be there. So this is a full-time work. But you cannot know this unless you know how to distinguish what is Dhamma from what is Adhamma. Today in the world of Lord Buddha's dispensation, we have a lot of Adhamma that's selling itself as Adhamma. So we have to do the work ourselves. The best, surest, quickest way to do that, dig into the suttas. Dig into the suttas, the Pali Nikayas. They're all there. The teaching of Lord Buddha is there. So if you really are intent on understanding the Dhamma, then you must associate with the teacher who carries the teachings in his heart, a wise and true disciple of the Tathagata, who is learned in what he taught, what Lord Buddha taught, who, having studied their various aspects, the Dhamma's aspects, always recalls them in his heart. It is him whom you must follow, therefore. The Bhikkhu who is learned, who studies and retains the Dhamma in his heart, is undeniably a steward of the great teacher's dispensation, wherever he may go. Thus, he indeed is an eye for the entire world to see with, deserving of respect wherever he goes. For he truly is one to be venerated and revered, with both palms pressed together at the heart. That's the Anjali, sign of respect. Now it's just a cultural thing. You see a bhikkhu, you put your hands in Anjali and just you're being respectful. There needs to also be a responsibility taking from our side. Who is it? What is it that I am bowing down to? Am I just going through the routine? These are questions, legitimate questions we must ask of ourselves. In this way, the one who, by studying the Dhamma, finds unending delight in the Dhamma. By reflecting on the Dhamma, he recollects the Dhamma non-stop, constantly walking with the Dhamma beating in his heart. There can be no decline or regression for him in what is true Dhamma. A few weeks ago, I spoke, I think it was the Vimuttayatana Sutta, where that was from the numerical discourses, Anandattara Nikaya, where Lord Buddha is talking about the 5 ways that a person can attain. One of them has always been through listening. Another one is while teaching the Dhamma. Another one is when you repeat in your mind something you've heard. In the Dhammapada, Lord Buddha says how you don't need to know so many verses, so many suttas, so many discourses. You could just remember a short segment of the teaching, something that grabs you, or even a quality. You might say Buddho, Buddho, or Arahant, Arahant, Arahant in your mind. Qualities of Lord Buddha. That might do it for you. But something that you can rely on, anchor yourself in your difficult days that you pass through. Instead of having to, push yourself, bulldoze yourself through the day by sheer willpower, because that's going to keep you a beggar. a weak person when you can be much more than that with the help and support of the Dhamma that will, if you do it right, will even grant you Nibbana. That's why Lord Buddha taught. He didn't just teach for those people in that part of the world, in India, 2,600 years ago. He didn't just teach them. He didn't teach the Dhamma for them. He taught the Dhamma for us, you. This is not something that we can just go, oh yeah, that would be lovely. Yeah, okay, let's flip the page. Next. No. And the access you have to Nibbana is your life. But you need a tool. You need a tool, and that's where the Dhamma comes in. So use a verse, use a Dhamma discourse, use a sutta. Write down in your journal something that really grabbed you from a discourse. Play it in your ear. Play it in your heart. And you might be one of those who actually attains, at the very least, a Sotapatti, stream winner, becoming a noble disciple in this life. These are not impossible things I'm talking about. These happen and do happen in life. So here is Venerable Ānanda talking to another bhikkhu who is also, apparently you kind of get a sense of how many bhikkhus were lying around just doing nothing. And Venerable Ānanda says, lying there in your overfed body, craving the indulgence of being pampered in comfort. Meanwhile, the little time you have keeps running out, greedily lusting after the experience of physical pleasure and ease. How can you ever hope to find happiness while pretending to live the life of a recluse? He's just calling them out. I don't know if there are any monasteries where any abbot, the leader of that community, ever would approach a bhikkhu and give him a piece of his mind like this. I don't know if people do that anymore. I've never encountered it. But there's a lot of that situation happening. Being overfed, seeking pleasure, because that's the natural condition of a puthujjana. So we don't have that caliber of teachers in the world today who shake the student up. Don't waste time. But these are not just meant for bhikkhus. Please remember that. This is for us. Get yourself out of the inertia, the ditch. You know which ditches are the ones that you're stuck in. No one's going to pull you out of it except for you. And there are the tools for it. Here is the set of verses that have really been the reasons why I wanted to translate this Venerable Ānanda's verses in the beginning, from the beginning. It's so touching because it's so human. It's so revealing of the pain he was feeling. And the pain I'm referring to is when his own teacher, Venerable Sāriputta, died. And the chief disciple. And Venerable Mahamoggallana also died. The other chief disciple. But there was a special bond between Venerable Sāriputta and Venerable Ānanda. And earlier, before we began today's meditation sit, I was mentioning how important it is for us to have Kalyanamittas in life. And at one point, because he was talking to Lord Buddha about his relationship with Venerable Sāriputta and how he helps him to understand the Dhamma better and better. He turned to Lord Buddha and said, Bhante, having a Kalyanamitta is half of the holy life. Brahmacharya, we call it, the holy life. Half of the holy life rests upon having a solid, beautiful Kalyanamitta in your life. Kalyanamitta doesn't have to be singular. And Lord Buddha corrects him. He says, don't say that, Ānanda, don't say that. Having Kalyanamittas in your life is the entirety of the holy life, he says. 100% of the holy life relies upon having genuine, true spiritual friends. So here we have the moment where he just hears of Venerable Sāriputta's death, who had gone to his family home and died. So look at his words. He says, I am all lost. Every direction seems vague and unclear. No Dhamma am I able to recollect, and nothing comes to mind. I feel I have lost the Dhamma in my heart. All the truths I was certain about, now there is nothing but confusion. Our dear spiritual friend is gone, and now no more. And all that is left is darkness all around. Imagine, earlier we just read him say he had retained in his heart the 84,000 teachings. At the hearing of the loss of his friend, his Kalyanamitta, there's confusion. He feels he has lost it all. Because everything looks vague and unclear, hazy, uncertain. What we don't have here is, in a different sutta where Lord Buddha sees him in this pain, and Lord Buddha was like the father to both Sāriputta and Moggallana. And when he is he knows that they both died, he turns to the Sangha of Bhikkhus that contained all 4 levels of awakened ones, also including the Putujjana Bhikkhus. He looks at all of them and he says, suddenly, Bhikkhus, he says, this whole congregation of Bhikkhus seems empty to my eyes. Empty, even though it was full of Bhikkhus. Because he says, now Sāriputta and Moggallana are gone. That also shows the humanity of Lord Buddha. Sometimes, many times actually, people think that the Buddha was beyond being human. Or once a person becomes an Arahant, that's it. They're cored to being human, having feelings, and, being alive is gone. They're almost like plastic. You leave it in the hands of commentators and scholars, that's what they're going to turn it into. Absolute nonsense. They cut out the humanity of Lord Buddha, and here we see the humanity of Venerable Ānanda as well. So in that instance also, Venerable Ānanda is obviously in front of Lord Buddha, and Lord Buddha hears these words, and he says to him, yes, but would you say that, well, because he was already a Sotapanna, Venerable Ānanda was already a noble disciple, would you say that your Kalyanamitta gave you Nibbana? He says, no. then what makes you think that the Nibbanic experience you've had is now lost because Sāriputta is no longer there? Do you see that? No one gives us Nibbana. Therefore, no one can take it away from us either. No teacher could give you awakening in this Dhamma and discipline. No teacher, including Lord Buddha, has ever given awakening to any student, nor will they ever be able to, because that's not the nature of things. It's a personal endeavor. At the most, the teacher encourages you, shows you the path, holds your hand, but you need to do it, to do the work, and to have that moment of awakening, seeing. So Venerable Ānanda sees that, and he pulls himself out of the misery that he was in, and he continues. This time he's referring to Lord Buddha's passing. When your fellow companion in the holy life has died and gone, and when your teacher too passes away, never to be seen again, all that is left for you then is this body that you still carry around with you. For there is no immediate and true friend like mindfulness aimed at the body. You will never be without a teacher so long as you have your body. That is what Venerable Ānanda is saying. No matter, even if there's nobody left on the planet, everybody's wiped out. There's just you and you alone. And then all the books, all the digital resources of the Dhamma, all of it is gone. But you're somehow alive. You're still not lost. So long as you have a body and you know how to turn your attention to the body, picking any aspect of it. If it's the breath, just focusing on the breath. Stay with it though. Don't let go of it. That will take you straight to Nibbana, irrespective of what's going on around you. You will never be without a teacher. Ever. That's why this path still produces arahants long after Lord Buddha is gone. And it will continue to do so so long as these teachings are still available for someone to hear, even if it's 1,000 years from now. Even though I say that this Dhamma and discipline will the way it is disappearing. That's why these efforts are being put to place, so that somewhere somebody might still have access to them. And then he continues with this last verse of that section. He says, this is also very touching to hear. Now, the old ones, my dear friends, have all gone away. Meanwhile, I am still here, as I neither agree with nor enjoy the companionship of the new. So I huddle with myself today, meditating alone, just like a bird snuggled in its nest in the cold rain. So many new bhikkhus had come, so many new faces. The old ones are gone. And this we can deduce that it comes from the later part of his life, because even after his awakening, Venerable Ānanda lived for at least another 40 years. So he became an arahant at the age of 80. And some I've read some places where they say he lived another 80 years, which not everyone is in agreement on. However, one thing's for sure we can say is that during the second council, which happened 100 years after the first council, there were present bhikkhus who were the first generation, or the actual students of Venerable Ānanda, sitting there in the second council. bhikkhus whose teacher was Venerable Ānanda himself. So they were the direct descendants in the Dhamma, hierarchically, sitting there in the second council. So he lived until at least the age of 120. So imagine all of your friends are gone. Probably Mahakassapa is also gone, Mahakachana is gone, probably his half-brother Venerable Anuruddha is gone, Kimbila, Nandiya, Rahula is already gone. And you're there, all you see are new faces. So I huddle with myself, he says, meditating alone, just like a bird snuggled in its nest in the cold rain. There's nobody, he feels, but already he's fine, he's got that. He's an Arahant. So here we see a verse that is included in the Theragāthā, but these words come from Lord Buddha himself at the moment of his death, which Venerable Ānanda is going to be repeating in his way. So this is Lord Buddha lying on his right side, and the whole of Kushinara, where he was lying down between the two solitaries, it was packed with people, but even more so, incalculable amounts of devas from different parts of the universes. And some of the bhikkhus were standing up to be, or sitting, but their position was so that they were blocking the view of other people who were behind them. So Lord Buddha was concerned about those who were there, who had come from such long distances, not just from this planet, just to see Lord Buddha. And Lord Buddha tells one bhikkhu, actually chastises, scolds him and says, move aside. You're blocking the view of these devas and brahmas who are here. And look what Lord Buddha says. Crowds of many visitors from various places have all arrived and from far away, trying to get a glimpse of me for the very last time. So please do not block their view of the Tathagata they have come to see. And let the assembly of all those gathered here get their chance to see me one more time. So Lord Buddha is giving them the opportunity to see him before he dies. And this is Venerable Ānanda's response. Crowds of many visitors from various places have all arrived and from far away, trying to get a glimpse of the teacher for the very last time. The one with pure vision, even now, still grants them all the opportunity to behold him, not turning anyone away from seeing him for the very last time. And let's continue on. In 25 years of being a noble disciple in training, I do not recall ever having a lustful or passionate thought arising in me. Behold, therefore, the power of the good Dhamma. He's talking from the moment of him attaining stream winning, the first stage of awakening. In 25 years of being a noble disciple in training, I do not recall ever having an evil or hostile thought arising in me. Behold, therefore, the power of the good Dhamma. For 25 years, I have attended on the Blessed One, my teacher, serving him always with loving deeds, in whichever way I could, always by his side, like a shadow that never leaves. For 25 years, I have attended on the Blessed One, my teacher, serving him always with loving speech, always by his side, like a shadow that never leaves. For 25 years, I have attended on the Blessed One, my teacher, serving him always with loving thoughts, always by his side, like a shadow that never leaves. So this was his declaration of who he has been and how truthful he had been to his position, and to be able to accomplish that role for 25 years. And this is also further declarations. You know, in hearing these words, that this came later on in his life, after he became an Arahant. As the Lord Buddha would be doing his walking meditation, going back and forth, I was there with him, walking in meditation, right behind him, as he tenderly kept teaching and instructing me the Dhamma, for which reason knowledge and understanding arose and has been growing in me ever since. Having a teacher is extremely important in our lives, in this Dhamma and discipline. For that, the best teacher, other than the suttas, where we have the greatest teacher, which is Lord Buddha himself, other than that, it's you. You are truly your own best teacher if you are based on the solid truth of the Dhamma. And the way to do that is you must go to the suttas. That's where you will find the answers you seek if you are still hazy and foggy, unable to distinguish between what is right, what is wrong, what is Dhamma, what is Adhamma. And Venerable Ānanda continues, but I am only a Sekha. This is when he's not yet an Arahant. Sekha means a noble disciple in training. A noble disciple who's beyond training means someone who's attained Arahantship. An Arya Savaka who's attained Arahantship. But Sekha is one who is still in training. Sometimes the Arahant is also referred to as Asekha, meaning someone who's beyond training. So here he says, but I am only a Sekha who still has more work to do, with a mind that still needs to be perfected, for it has not yet reached its full maturity. And my loving teacher, who showed me nothing but sweet compassion throughout, is now gone and passed into final Nibbana. So this is, you can tell this is actually from the time of where the Mahaparinibbana Sutta took place, meaning Lord Buddha's death at that time, because Venerable Ānanda was not an Arahant yet. And he continues, this is right after Lord Buddha's death. From what we will read his verses, we will know he's talking about the earthquake that took place when Lord Buddha closed his eyes for the last time. Oh, and what a terrifying event it was when he was no more, he as in Lord Buddha, where goose flesh ran up and down my entire spine, quivering it, and all the body hair stiffened and stood on end with a jolt. That very moment when the mighty, self-awakened Buddha, possessed of all his sublime qualities, entered into final Nibbana. The earth shook, just like it had shaken that moment when Lord Buddha attained to Buddhahood. This section is verses not from Venerable Ānanda, but about him. This is coming from other Arahants, specifically the Arahants from the first council. This is happening right after he had completed the noble task of reciting the entire suttas, where it was codified, meaning groups of younger bhikkhus who were called memory monks had memorized everything that was said, because nothing was written down, but in those days people were able to retain so much. So there were several young novice monks who were Arahants who were listening to, and then later on they had to go and check it with Venerable Ānanda at night to see if what they were, and they would recite together. To know, for Venerable Ānanda to know that they were able to grasp what he had said. So when this was done after months, the Arahant monks, his fellow Arahants, are coming forward and declaring these accolades of Venerable Ānanda to him. Ānanda, who is learned and widely versed, holding true to the teachings, bearing the entire Dhamma in his heart, he indeed is the guardian of the treasury, bequeathed to us by our teacher, the great sage. And now Ānanda, being an eye for the entire world, helps it to see what he himself has now finally seen through the realization of Nibbana. So this is their own confirmation of the Arahanthood or Arahantship of Venerable Ānandas. They continue, being learned and widely versed, holding true to the teachings, bearing the entire Dhamma in his heart, he indeed is the guardian of the treasury, bequeathed to us by our teacher, the great sage. And now, being an eye for the entire world, Ānanda helps it to see. For in the dead of night, through his perseverance, he did dispel and obliterate all the darkness around, indeed. Ānanda truly is the sage who kept the master's teachings in his heart, intact with his superb memory, while mastering their order and structure throughout, holding true to each and every one, tireless in holding them firmly together and coherent, the teachings, the suttas, the connections. Vigilantly, our brother has stood strong. He indeed is deserving of the title of the senior bhikkhu who upholds the Dhamma. You truly are the living mine of jewels, O our one and only Ānanda. And these are the last verses we have of Venerable Ānanda coming up. I have served my teacher by attending on him to the very best of my abilities. And especially, I have fulfilled the very goal of his instructions to me, attaining the deathless, as I was taught by the Lord Buddha himself. And having finally put down the heavy burden, I too can say, what had to be done is now done. Now the holy life has been fully lived, with nothing further left for me to do. For there is no desire to be found still lurking in me, with no more re-becoming to any state ever again. Sadhu. What a beautiful, beautiful treasure we have. So imagine there's so many verses from the other Arahants, but Venerable Ānanda is always close to our hearts, because many of the other Arahants we might not know them, but I love the humanity of Venerable Ānanda there. It speaks loud and clear despite the centuries, despite the cultural differences, you might say. And the language differences, it's so alive. And I find it to be as an encouragement, cheering us on to do our task, because Lord Buddha did not give him as in Venerable Ānanda, that task to be accomplished. Each of us, all of us who hear these words, we have to beckon that call. We have to answer it. And how we do, it's up to us. For that, we have this life, and this life alone, as far as we're concerned. Nibbana cannot happen in a future life. It's not something for a future life. It's not something reserved for a future life. It is only for this life, the Teva Dhamme. It's never intended for another life. That is not Dhamma. That is Adhamma. Anyone who says, oh, in another life, they are not deserving to be called a student of Lord Buddha. They're a disgrace to this Dhamma and discipline. They don't belong in this sasana. We must take charge of our life and do the work that must be done. Despite the fact that Venerable Ānanda was given specific, call it prophecy by Lord Buddha, that he will attain in a very short time, he could have still been lazy. He could have still just, dance on those laurels, as they say, and not do a thing. We must do it. No one else can. A wise person will take all these as resources, as encouragements, and cheer oneself on to do the work, because no one is responsible for your happiness. Ultimately, no one is responsible for your own safety and security. Nobody. They can wish it. When we die, no one will come and join us to walk with us, whichever realm we end up in. No one can. So we are the only inheritors of our actions. And the greatest action is attaining liberation from what? From suffering, from perpetual suffering. So that is what the encouragement here is. So I hope you are as equally encouraged as I am in these wonderful, amazing pearls of words, diamonds of words that we enjoyed. So I will stop here and see if there are any questions. If not, we can just transfer the merits of listening to this beautiful Dhamma from Venerable Ānanda. And when there is a moment of beauty, a beauty as in the enjoyment of Dhamma, anywhere in the cosmos, anywhere in existence, there are resonating hearts, there are resonating minds, not necessarily in the same shape and form as ourselves. They are attracted. They will come faster than the speed of light to the perfume. Of the Dhamma. They will find it. They are thirsty for the Dhamma. So when they see a resonating Dhammic frequency, if you will, from your heart, they sense it. They will break boundaries. They will cross uncrossable distances, and they will be present. And let us share the merits of having listened and putting the time to listen to these beautiful words of Venerable Ānanda's, and all that is to be enjoyed from it, the rewards to come from it, in your own practice, in you gaining of freedom. May they also share in those merits, as well as your parents, loved ones, friends, teachers, and enemies. Whoever is in a good capacity, in accepting mode of existence, may they also gain from these merits. Ākāsattha ca bhūmātha devānaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu lokasasa. Ākāsattha ca bhūmātha devānaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu desama. Ākāsattha ca bhūmātha devānaga mahidika punyantang anumoditva chirang rakhantu mam paranti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. May you all be well. May you be healthy. May your practice grow thousandfold. May you be surprised by the progress you make. Be gentle with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Be honest with yourself. Be truthful with yourself. And be like Venerable Ānanda to yourself. And encourage yourself in those difficult times when you find yourself to be alone, confused, without any certainty. Have the Dhamma be your anchor, and you have nothing to worry about. I guarantee it. Lord Buddha guarantees it. May the triple gems blessings be with you all. Until next week. Sukhi Hot.